Hey guys, my name is Charlie and I'm powerless over my emotions. We're here today to do a sponsorship workshop because it's the thing that you asked for most. You said in your responses to the survey that Valerie and Ed and the others conducted that one of the things that seemed to be missing most in EA was the practice of sponsorship. And you know what? You're right. All the evidence supports that. That indeed EA is not practicing sponsorship, unlike all the other 12-step programs. We've got a remarkably low number of people that do it. And so first, Dave here is going to give us a little bit of history on sponsorship in EA, and starting actually with sponsorship in AA.
This is a reading from the AA book called Living Sober. In the earliest days of AA, the term sponsor was not even in the AA jargon. Then a few hospitals in Akron, Ohio, and New York began to accept alcoholics under that diagnosis as patients. If a sober AA member would agree to sponsor a sick man or woman, the sponsor took the patient to the hospital, visited them regularly, and was present when the patient was discharged, and took the patient home and then to an AA meeting. At the meeting, the sponsor would introduce the newcomer to the other happily non-drinking alcoholics. All through the early months of recovery, the sponsor stood by, ready to answer questions and to listen whenever needed. Sponsorship turned out to be such a good way to help people to get established in AA that it became a custom followed throughout the AA world, even when hospitalization was not necessary.
Thank you, Dave. And so what we're going to talk about now, does this cord go longer? Yes, it does, good, is why sponsorship is not practiced widely in EA. And so Russ has a thought about that.
Yes, I'm Russ, and I'm on a joyful journey through these 12 steps.
Hey, Russ.
Microphone needs to be closer, Russ. It's not even getting in the front row.
The original people, the old timers, and what I heard from them was that EA cannot do sponsorship because we all have different problems, and so nobody looked any further than that. They took their word for it and haven't gone any further. Over the years, I've attempted to sponsor people or get sponsorship started, but of no avail. Nothing really came about it because I didn't have somebody in front of me to show me the way. And so up until recently, until Dave showed up on the scene and I invited him to breakfast, and he started asking me questions, and he was so eager about this that it was almost, it took me by surprise. And so we kept doing this, and we would go to my cave after we ate breakfast, and he would type some things that I've had in my head for 20 years or so. And up come a lot of stuff and relieved my mind enough for new stuff to come in. Otherwise, it was all clogged up with the old stuff. And so it became apparent to me after Charlie then showed up also on the scene and others came to our breakfasts that there was everybody couldn't wait to get there on Saturday morning for this 3-hour breakfast. And it became apparent to me that, man, there's something here that we are missing, have been missing, and it comes out to be sponsorship. So at the present time, the three of us are sponsoring each other, and the growth within me has just jumped out of the ceiling. I mean, it's so fascinating to me. After it took 40 some years to get to this point, to convince me that sponsorship is absolutely necessary to go further. Because when I'm left in my own head with all the stuff that goes around, I get not too well. And sharing it with others and relieving the mind of whatever comes to me, it lets more stuff come in. And I can grow. It's been terrific. So that's my part of what I want to share.
Thank you, Russ. So we're going to start with the question, why is not sponsorship practiced widely in EA? So since the early days of AA, sponsorship has been a pillar in all the 12-step programs, besides EA. In EA, there's a section on sponsorship that you've been given in the How It Works If You Work It book, so that's the handout that you've got. There's also a sponsorship pamphlet, and it is still widely agreed that sponsorship is not practiced amongst EA members. So one of the reasons that people say is the foremost is that there's a lack of willing sponsors. EA does not deal with physical addictions, so sponsorship may not seem as important, but it is. This one's important. This is something Russ shared with me. He thinks that EA folks are more necessarily loners. For some reason, there's a higher degree of loners in this program.
What's that?
Okay.
Good.
It's going to let me talk right here. Okay, good. Cool. Don't move. All right. So Russ speculates that people in this program are more tending to be loners, and this is crucial because it's also the block to our recovery, because isolation is at the heart of the disease. And so the national initiative of which this workshop is a part is to try and bring sponsorship back into EA, or into EA for the first time. We're thinking that the reason that we might not be growing, it's like there's all these, like Elaine can deal with the promotional ways of reaching out to new people to join, but how about when they actually get to the group? What does fellowship do? What does sponsorship do? How much of that is a part of the growth of an EA group? EA may be unique because there might be more of us that have codependency issues. And if you have codependency issues like I do, then you might be cautious about taking on a sponsor, because I don't want to take, I first of all have to watch my baggage about not taking on people, and I might get trigger my own codependency and my caretaking. Likewise, I have my own, habit of staying at a certain distance from people, So why practice sponsorship? Russ just talked about what some of the gains are that he experienced when he started to have a sponsor relationship with Dave. Sponsorship can help us to achieve a richer, deeper, more enjoyable recovery than we're likely to find on our own. Working directly with another person who's monitoring our progress vastly increases our commitment to the program. It's vicarious. When you're around Yoda, it ain't just what Yoda says, it's being in his energy field, because Yoda is calm. That's you. Yoda is calm, and sponsorship is about being around somebody who's already got the calm part, the trust part, the embodiment in the program, But emotional binging, things like fear, anger, depression, self-pity, can be as destructive as any process addiction like codependency. It's important to have somebody know us thoroughly when they see us go into our stuff. It's really important to have somebody that knows our patterns, that Russ can say, "You're in your head again, Charlie." And I can go, "Ooh, thank you. Appreciate that. I want to be brought back to my heart." So Dave is going to next talk about his experience of sponsorship.
Thank you, Charlie. First, I'll just read my story from the Fourth Step book. My most powerful negative characteristic is I'm oversensitive. And my most powerful positive characteristic is I'm sensitive. All right. Ever since I was a young child, I've been overly sensitive. I was deeply hurt by the slightest criticism or limitation I had. The circumstances in my life brought out my negative traits. I wasn't good in sports, lacked self-esteem, and was sometimes teased. I worried a lot about fitting in. Furthermore, I had early sexual experiences that brought about more shame. I was very shy and felt terrified to speak in front of others, even with people I knew. I carried these fears well into my adult life. I tackled shyness through classes and work presentations, and I continued to put too much energy into my flaws. I became indifferent and flippant and didn't make goals in my life. I turned to unhealthy habits to cover my pain. As I emerged from my shyness, I sometimes became overly inquisitive of others. I used negative traits as escapes. My recovery process, the overwhelming emotional feelings that accompanied the death of my first close relative, my grandma, in 1992, prompted me to develop a relationship with God. I joined a church and became very involved with developing my faith. This was only the first step of my recovery. My negative traits became less problematic, only to come back in full force in midlife. When I found out about EA, I believed it would be a good fit for me. I was right. I loved the Apple Valley Group structure and people. I immediately delved into the program and even did a fourth step during the first month. However, I didn't dig very deeply and found I still struggled with many of my negative traits, despite my weekly meeting attendance. Doing this searching, fearless, and joyful fourth step really helped me turn things around. I found out I can funnel my sensitivity into being more aware and responsive to the feelings of others. As I do this, however, I must be vigilant of my expectations of others and remember to take care of myself. I have a long ways to go in my recovery. I need to, but thanks to this new way of life and the fourth step inventory, I'm well on my way. So regarding sponsorship, I was so thrilled when Russ asked me to breakfast. It was about 2 years into the program, and made me feel worthwhile just being invited. First of all, when I first went to EA, I noticed right away his serenity. And I used to go with a friend to EA, and one would sit on one side of him and the other would sit on the other side of him, hoping his serenity would just rub off on us. But I guess you need to work the program for a few years first. So, I'm thinking of your story about the getting water out of the well from that poet Rumi. There's a story that's twice as old or more about a woman going to get water out of a well. And she had a higher power there at the well that, even though she wasn't proud of some things she did in her life, totally and lovingly accepted her. And I think that was maybe one of the first fourth steps ever recorded. It was about, hey, you're a worthwhile person. Remembering what Michael Obsat said last night about people always having a second chance and third chance, and always, no matter what you've done or where you've been, you are always entitled to that love from God and dignity. And that's how Russ made me feel. He made me feel, he would ask questions, non-judgmental, very helpful, and I asked questions of him also because I was eager to learn. So that's what sponsorship has been to me. And the group expanded. We had more people come to breakfast, and same thing, share stories. Once in a while the conversation gets a little bit into the world, into the small talk, but most of the time we try and keep it to our EA topics. So I will pass it on to
Let me interject
who's next.
really quickly. We have an issue with sound. There's no sound in this building right in the back. So if you have hearing problems, there is sound in the front. But we can't turn the sound in the front up too much or we get the feedback. That's going to give you guys like squeaking in the ear.
Message, if you're having trouble hearing, feel free to move forward now.
Yeah, come forward to the front, and if you are in the front and you have good hearing, switch to the back. Is that cool with everybody? 'Cause
Great.
It's something that we can't work around.
Good
There's
idea,
things in the
Cam.
middle don't work.
Yep. So come on up if you're having trouble hearing. Okay, so how many people here have worked other 12-step programs? Please raise your hand and leave your hands up. And now, folks, I want to invite you to look around the room at us. Let's see, what do we got here? It's at least a couple dozen. All right, at least a couple dozen of us. I worked 5 other 12-step programs. Sponsorship is something that we do in other 12-step programs. When you walk into a room and you're trying to guess whether or not you've... When you walk into a room and you're trying to guess whether or not you've got a good meeting, one of the first things is, are they practicing sponsorship? Because you can look and see if people are talking about their own story. That's one thing, or people talking about themselves or somebody else. But the other thing is, are the steps being worked? And finally, is sponsorship being practiced? So in my work addiction program, which I shared with you before, I have had a sponsor for 15 years now, and his name is Jack. And Jack and I have a half-hour conversation every Tuesday at 9:30 in the morning. Every Tuesday, without fail, half hour. And that relationship, we check in. We're good. We're good. We check in right about, okay, this is what my top plate bottom line issues were. This is what came up for me that was a challenge for me. This is what was really good for me. These are the challenges that I've been having in my program, that my sobriety is challenged. I'm thinking about having a slip here. And we reciprocate. We have a co-sponsoring relationship. We do that as equals. I had a sponsor in Coda. The guy was wonderful. I was attending about every other meeting, and he said, one of my rules for sponsorship is that you have to attend all the meetings. I've learned that it takes coming to meetings to recover, and I can't help you by myself. So if you want to recover, you have to come to the meetings. That's my condition from being your sponsor. I've repeated that requirement to every single person that's ever asked me to be a sponsor since then. So I've literally had probably about 6 or 7 really excellent sponsor relationships. In all of them, and so some of them were the traditional sponsor relationship where it's one way, where I'm a newcomer and there was a guy who'd been in the program a long time, like in my recovery from sex addiction. And this was an experience where he walked me through the steps, something we haven't said yet. A sponsor walks you through the 12-step program. What step are you on? Let's work on it. What are you thinking? Are you ready to go to step 4 yet? I had one sponsor who told me, I want you to take a year and be done with the steps within 1 year. And that was like perfect. I took, the 4th step took about 3 of those months, but I got to break it out according to my own speed, and I had this idea. The guys from Akron, the original founders of AA, they took guys through the steps quick because it was a life and death illness. We don't have to screw around and take a long time. We don't have to do it. We can go through these steps, and sponsor is a person that helps you walk through the steps. So you guys have handouts. Do you have a neat questionnaire about sponsorship in your laps? Do you guys all have a questionnaire about sponsorship? Bring those up, would you? So here's what I want to ask you to do. We are going to have a real discussion about sponsorship next, but I want you to do this first because this is going to prime the pump and it's going to bring up the issues that are most important in our discussion. You'll get a chance to look at what a lot of other people have thought were the main issues here. So please have a look at this. And what I want to ask you to do is to take 10 minutes right now. And even if you don't have a pen, just go through and answer the questions that are relevant to you. If you haven't sponsored, obviously you're not going to answer any of the questions that have to do with sponsorship. And so take 10 minutes right now. We'll park, and then we're going to come back and we're going to have a discussion about what your real experience is around sponsorship. Do 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 do. All right, we're done. Didn't work. Oop, correction, we only have 5 minutes to do this. Oh, 4 minutes and 30 seconds. And again, we don't expect you to fill all of it out. Just take another minute. We're just trying to get your heads primed for some fun. What do you think is fun?
These sponsors, maybe you could do the same thing as what they did.
Yeah, that's a good idea. They just told us that we had limited reserve. We have limited time. She just told us that we have 15 minutes to realize. Should I talk? Yeah, if I go check my voice, can I do it without my mic and start? Our friend Dave is going to read something about what sponsorship is and what it isn't.
Sponsorship is a two-way commitment. Generally, the sponsors completed more steps, especially the fourth and fifth. Sponsorship can be a trial basis and can be ended by either party. Being a sponsor is a way to show gratitude towards the program. By freely taking on responsibility of sponsorship, we get that payoff that our own program begins to expand and deepen. Sponsorship opens a valuable avenue for growth as we listen to sponsees' progress. Choosing a sponsor is based on attraction, wanting the serenity and recovery that they have. Having a sponsor and applying the program on a daily basis, sponsees may be able to make the same progress as their sponsor did.
Okay, folks. Well, what we want to do is we want to start out and have a few stories from you about healthy sponsorship. And so, what we're looking for is 1 or 2 minutes stories where you share with us. Sid, could you be the microphone sharer? And so, is there anyone here who can tell us succinctly what you got out of sponsorship practice in any of your programs? Anyone? Nina.
Hi. Hi.
Oh,
I'm Nina. And I'm very challenged by my emotions.
Hi, Nina.
I'll just make it short. I just wanted, where it says reasons that you got a sponsor, I wanted someone to talk to. And then how hard or easy, yeah, okay, good. How hard or easy was it for me to get a sponsor? It was easy. And then let's see, was it a sponsor from my home group? Yes. And what have I received? Let's see. Oh, reasons that I got a sponsor. Oh, I said that already. Sorry, trying to be quick. I only have one sponsor. I contact her about once a week, unless she's on a trip to England or something. And then, what benefits have I received from having a sponsor? Well, she's always available. If I can't reach her, she'll call me back pretty quick. So that's it.
Thank you, Nina. Looks like Susan.
Hi, I had an effective sponsor who gave me regular check-ins, and I talked with her my first several years in the program on a daily basis check-in, and she recommended meetings, writing, reading, going to step meetings, and having a network of people to work alongside when she was unavailable. And it was invaluable for her to give me good, orderly direction at that time on how to practice the program. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. A network. Hear that? Fellowship.
Yeah, my name is Michael, a grateful member of VA, and I listened to people in other 12-step programs that were inspirational, that I wanted to get some of their energy from. So I asked them to be my sponsors. And that worked very well. But in EA, I had a hard time connecting with sponsors. So what we did was we got a group of us that are working the 4th step. There's like 4 or 5 of us. So you get really intimate with people that you're working on a 4th step work really fast, and we sort of sponsor each other. And that's more,
Yeah.
I think we're all equal anyway, so this business of putting one person on a pedestal, it lasts for a very short period of time, and then they're back down. And I know we all bounce around, so I like this idea of co-sponsorship. Very.
Thank you, Mike.
I'm calling Tomas.
Looks like somebody else has got the mic.
Hi, my name is Tom, and I am a grateful, recovering emotional addict.
Hey, Tom.
My best sponsorship relationships were all outside of this program in another fellowship. And my best one was many years ago. The man lived near me, and he was very careful about his boundaries so that I didn't end up becoming dependent on him. And yet he would say, okay, which step are you on? And we took walks. We did most of our work on walks. However, there were times where we'd sit down with pieces of paper and we'd look at the book for that program, and I would write out my responses to the questions. He also did my 5th step. Now, I've had probably 5 or 6 sponsors over the years. I've never had one in this program. I've asked for one, but there is a reluctance. There's no question about it. I had one man who's not in my current group who sponsored me for about 6-8 months, but I felt I wasn't getting my needs met. So it's important that the sponsor feels that they are getting something out of it. Not that they're just, oh, I got to do this service thing because that's in the traditions, you know. Oh, what a pain. And it's more like what I found when I was a sponsor is that, and I've had that 3 or 4 times. It continually reminded me of how close I am to a slip. It also helped me with my daily inventory because I'd ask him questions and say, well, wait a minute, I did that this morning. What am I getting out of his case for? And I also found that somehow I had more serenity as a result of doing this on a regular basis. Now, when I was doing this particular type of sponsorship, I had been taught to do it in a very big book-based way. In fact, that's all we really used. And in the big book, I've been taught to do is you sit down, you actually read the book together very slowly, and then you discuss what it means to you. And then you, as the sponsor, tell stories that are hopefully true. And and then we also did some praying together. Now, that is one tool. That's one way of doing it. But I found that when we were working together on a regular basis, and very much like EA, we were concentrating on the steps. It wasn't like, well, how you doing? Yeah, I went out for a beer last night, and I beat my wife when I came home, and that sort of thing. That's not sponsorship. That's not a sponsor-sponsee relationship. You can do that. You can have that kind of discussion, but I found that it had to concentrate on the 12 steps. So, thank you.
Sid, we have time for just one more. I think Phyllis had her hand up first. Sid, I think Phyllis had her hand up first here. You didn't see her. She's up right here in the very front, right over here. She's quiet. You wouldn't notice her otherwise. Sorry, folks. Yeah, we got a late start, so it's our fault, too.
Can I sit?
Yes.
I have trouble standing, thank you. I'm Phyllis, and I'm an alcoholic, actually, and not in EA. I'm the EA non-programs trustee.
Hi, Phyllis.
And sponsorship is the backbone of my program. I was assigned my first sponsor by the lady that brought me into the program. She said, I'm too close to you, here's my sponsor, and that was the end of that. And I've had more than one sponsor because it has to click after a while. I got the best one I'd ever had, and that was one that took me to coffee. In my program, when you come in, you're usually so sick, very few people want much to do with you, or at least with me, so I had a sponsor that took me to coffee. She prayed with me even when I didn't want to pray. She spoon-fed me the big book because I wasn't able to read without going to sleep. And she was just a very dear friend until she moved out of town. And then I had another one that taught me the steps really strongly. And now I have a current one who is, we're friends. We've both lost so many sponsors at our age that we just sponsor each other. But we do contact each other almost every day. We read something meditative together and just briefly tell each other what's going on. And that's what we do now. But before, it was mostly a sponsor kind of spoon-feeding the steps to somebody that really couldn't do it on their own. But what I get out of sponsorship is it keeps me going back to the beginning of the program. It gets rid of my pride, makes me realize I cannot help somebody with steps unless I'm redoing the steps. And I haven't had to go to any other program because it's there. I find it deeper every time I go back with the sponsee. And I think that's the main thing. We don't do it for them, we do it for ourselves. It's the way we keep what we have. And I still go on a panel for beginners because that's how I stay really fresh. And we get sponsors for them. We talk sponsorship at every meeting.
Thank you, Phyllis. Okay, so now begins the 2015 EA Sponsorship Challenge. So some of the questions that you asked are answered in the questionnaire. Do you want to have a sponsor? If you don't have one, do you want to get one? Yes? This is so private. Anyone who wants to get a sponsor, if you feel like you want to say that, raise your hand. Look at that. That's great. One person without a microphone, what's one barrier that would keep you from asking for a sponsor? Anyone? Any one of you that raised your hands. What's one barrier that might keep you from actually going and doing it?
Fear.
Fear. Fear of what?
Rejection.
Rejection? Judgment?
No.
Distance.
Distance.
Not having any sponsors in my own group.
Nobody there.
Anonymity.
Anonymity. Ooh, that's a tough one.
Pride.
Time.
Pride.
Pride. Lack of faith in people. Are you willing to face those fears?
Yes.
Thank you for naming them. Good luck with that. Is there any of you that it might be easier to ask for a temporary sponsor to begin with? Raise your hands if you think that might be a good way to jump in for you. There we go. 8, 9, 10 people. Is there anybody here that is not currently a sponsor? Is there anyone here who's willing to be a sponsor? Look around the room. Okay, this is important because they don't have to be in your group. My phone relationship with Jack is from hundreds of miles away. Now, please keep them up. Look around the room. There might be somebody here in this room that you've already made a contact with. Somebody that you have a natural connection with, that you just have some sense. Okay, good. So one more thing about that. If somebody says no, it doesn't mean that it's a judgment on you, does it? It could be time commitments. It could be something about them that they don't feel a readiness. So it's something that we shouldn't take personally. We prepared some handouts for you. The other sheet that you've all got is a photocopy from EA's It Works If You Work It on sponsorship. So have a look on that. It's a great, simple guide. You also each have a copy of this guide on sponsorship. We decided not to go through this because it's already written down, and so good guidelines for that. Elaine, how are we doing for time?
5 minutes. 4 minutes.
4 minutes? Great. Okay. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Okay. Now we go global. What can your home group do to promote sponsorship? What might your home group do to promote sponsorship? And so I'm not asking as a general question right now. Actually, I am. Go ahead, Zoe. I'm going to ask that these all be 30 seconds or less. Go ahead, Zoe.
Model it.
Model it. France?
Talk about it.
Talk about it.
Talk about it at every meeting.
Talk about it at every meeting. Okay, let's stop about that one. We added it to our yellow card. And so at every meeting, would all those who are willing to be sponsors or temporary sponsors raise their hand? It happens at every meeting. Look around, notice it. And so we do that at every meeting. It also has to do with introducing people. You know, one thing we don't do in our group, and I'm going to cut to the quick here. Let's make a contract with each other. How many people here feel the urge and want to have more sponsorship happen in your home group? Raise your hand. Now, there's the most hands we've had happen. A couple of ideas about ways that you can do this. One, in your phone list, add an asterisk by anybody who's willing to be a sponsor. Put that in the guide, okay? But how's that going to happen? When you go back to your business meeting, make a motion, say, I move that we promote sponsorship in this group, And that we do it by first naming who's all willing to be your sponsor. Everybody raise their hand. And then we're going to put an asterisk by your name in the phone list. Everybody gets a phone list. They've got it there. Tool 1. Tool 2. Get agreements to ask temporary sponsors to raise their hands during that part of the meeting every time. Any other ideas about how to promote sponsorship back in your home group? Sharon.
I was just thinking that there's an awful lot of responsibility that probably goes with being a sponsor.
Yep.
Would it be possible to have like a sponsor workshop or some kind of guidelines to be a decent sponsor?
This podcast will exist. You can direct them to, or her question was, what kind of support and workshops can there be on sponsorship? This will be a podcast that will be available for people. These materials will be available. And frankly, I think that more materials need to be developed on this subject. It's one of the areas that we're lacking. Do you have any other ideas to answer your own question? Phyllis?
The way I get a sponsor and ask the sponsor questions when they come up with sponsorship.
Amen.
That's what I use my sponsor for.
In AA, there is actually a couple of books
On sponsorship.
on sponsorship.
Yep, we don't have one.
I do think we need to talk about co-sponsoring because
Yep.
we don't have any, visible sponsors in our home group.
Yep. Okay, so he said that we need to talk about co-sponsorship, which is, what Dave and I and Russ discussed. Cam, did you have one?
Oh, I was just gonna suggest that one way to get more sponsors is to reach out to other groups in your community. So if there are other like anonymous meetings, there's like Narcotics Anonymous, etc. Reach out to those people if there's anyone willing to be a temporary sponsor.
There's a whole discussion. And so one more thing. I'm going to suggest one more thing. Let's support each other in going home and doing sponsorship. All the people that raised hands, did we get a sign-up sheet for that? The people willing to be support sponsorship? We didn't get that. Here's a simple way to do it. In the sign-up sheet on the other room, there's a sign-up sheet in the other room that's for people who are willing to do the 4-step guide. Right next to it will be another sheet that says people willing to sponsor people who are bringing sponsorship back to their group. And so I know I'll be on that list. I'll put myself on there. People that you can contact to get support in bringing sponsorship back to your group, the nuts and bolts. One last comment. Who's get the last comment? Okay, Betty.
I was a part of a different 12-step group, and it was a very large group, but we designated what we called a temporary sponsor. We got someone to volunteer to be a temporary sponsor to the next newcomer who walked through the door.
Even before they came in?
Even before they
Wow,
came
that's
in.
brilliant. That's
so
brilliant.
when they came in, we could say, here's someone who has agreed to be your temporary sponsor. When you get to know the people in the group, feel free to choose your own sponsor, but the temporary sponsor would then call that person and check in with them for the first few weeks to see how they were doing.
Man, that's so great. Okay, well, we're going to wrap up this workshop. And what's next? What's the next thing on the schedule?
The 2 tracks.
2 tracks. Okay. So, and where's the physical location? Right here is going to be Sharon